Oh, hello again, it's another speed paint, because I like to talk about things and these are the easiest videos I can make while I try to get the bigger ones done. We all know I wish part 2 was taking a bit, and the Knowing What I Know Now rewrite cover that I have in the works ended up being more ambitious than I intended, which is just a fancy way of saying that I'm not satisfied with my vocal performance and I'm still trying to nail down a good take. So let's talk about some silly things to pass the time until those guys are done, shall we? If I had a nickel for every webcomic idea I've had, I'd have too many of them. That's something that'll happen a lot in art, it seems. You always think one idea is so good and surely this will be your big magnum opus once you can get it done and figure things out, but that doesn't always pan out. And that's okay! Not all your ideas are going to be bangers, but they're necessary stepping stones to get there. And hey, you could always come back to them later. I mean, that's how Toby Fox made Deltarune. He got the idea for the game first, realized the scope was a little much for his current set of skills, and made Undertale first to get the hang of the whole game-making thing. Maybe that idea you had as a kid that never panned out could end up being your Deltarune. So I found exactly 3 old ideas of mine that probably have no chance of being made into full comics, either because the time I'd have to put in to make them work might not be compatible with my current schedule, or they're just too bad and I'd have to go back to the drawing board. Maybe if I got back into writing just straight up books, I could make them work. Or light novels. We're gonna be looking at these in order of, how far I got in them. Some of these have pages I actually uploaded online somewhere, and like with my DeviantArt page, they're still up. I'm totally not gonna regret never taking them down after this video goes up. I was struggling to think of what to draw for these, because my brain defaulted to what I did in the Wish character design video, but I can't just pick one person from these stories, and I can't draw all the important characters because there's way too many of them and you'll find out why. But then it hit me. Mock book covers. That's what we're doing. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about them. Tell me your first anime was Blue Exorcist without telling me your first anime was Blue Exorcist. Technically, this started as a novel rather than a webcomic. I wrote it as an original story on Wattpad of all places, and then later thought, hey, this might make a better comic than a book, actually. I got 10 pages into it before I stopped, and unfortunately, I don't have any of the old pages. I started drawing them in 8th grade on printer paper, and that's pretty easy to lose. So the plot of this one revolves around Aston Matthew Faust, a teenager at a boarding school in California. I never specified where the beachside city he went to school in was actually set, but it was basically California. He gets told by his friend Eliza that his full name has origins in the occult. You see, Aston's full first name is Astaroth. And Eliza is interested in the occult and finds out that he shares his name with the demon from the Bible. I thought I was clever as a 14-year-old, you see. As an aside, me making Eliza into the occult and then not making her the most alt-looking teen girl you've ever met was such a missed opportunity on my part. One night, Aston has this intense nightmare about being bullied, and then some mysterious figure implied to be his absent father shows up and takes care of it. And when he wakes up, whoa, demon puberty! I'm realizing while recording this that I basically just wrote the nightmare scene from Turning Red, but with Satan instead of red pandas. Post-production geeky tangent here for a second. While I was drawing Aston for this, I kind of forgot what he looked like, and I didn't have a lot of art on hand because it was old and lost and stuff. But one thing that I did remember partway through was, oh right, I gave him Jordan Sweeto's hairstyle. So that was a fun thing to remember and tells you exactly everything you need to know about me at the time. Anyways, back to the speed paint. But yeah, Aston doesn't find out what exactly is going on, but his roommate Jonathan and the previously mentioned Eliza help him through it. By that I mean they help him hide the horns and learn to walk on his poor little hoofy woofies. Eliza's like, oh, let's go to the library to do some research and figure out what's going on. But then they get intercepted by 3 strangers. These 3 strangers all know who Aston is, for you see, this is Asmodeus, Leviathan, and Beelzebub. We'll call them Az, Levi, and Beelzy for short. They're in human disguises, of course, but they're very real demons sent from very real hell by the very real devil. All to keep an eye on Aston as he comes into his power. Yeah, so the big plot twist is that Aston's the son of Satan. I didn't even have to dig up the archived Wattpad upload to remember the lore behind this tidbit. So, hell in this world is ruled over by 2 archdemons. Lucifer, the demon of pride, and Satan, the demon of wrath. Every source I found as a kid listed them as 2 different people, so that's how it is in this world. Lucifer wants to rule over hell, but since Satan was the one behind the whole split off from heaven and do our own thing, he became the de facto leader. So Lucifer did the one thing a demon can't refuse. He struck a deal with him. If Satan can't sire an heir before the new millennia, Then Lucifer becomes the ruler of hell. This leads to Satan going to Earth and meeting Aston's mom in the 90s, knocking her up, and he actually enjoys being a dad, but there's like a lore reason he has to be a distant father. I'm gonna see if I can recall this correctly, since like I said, I lost all the comic adaptation pages, which is where this lore happened. So, Satan has a brand on his back. It's implied heaven put it there once he was cast out and fell. If he leaves hell for too long, it burns into his back and causes him great pain. And when Aston was around 6 months old, it finally got too much for him and he had to leave. But he'd do one more thing for his lover and son before he left. He placed a sealing spell on Aston, hiding all his demon features until he was old enough to handle the truth. Hence why he suddenly went through demon puberty at age 17. The reason Levi, Az, and Beelzy had to show up and keep an eye on him is because since he's coming into his power as the Antichrist, everyone from heaven, hell, and in between is going to want to kill him or use him for whatever reason. These people include Lucifer, who wants to take him out so that Satan's end of the deal falls through and Lucy can take control of hell, an exorcist slash love interest, who wants to take him out before he becomes a problem, and Sariel, a fallen angel who's convinced that vanquishing the son of Satan will earn her a spot back in heaven. And Aston isn't even wanting in on this whole Antichrist thing. He just wants to live a normal human life without any of this heaven-hell political drama. I think my favorite detail from this old draft is that it's a lore thing for every archdemon to have a singular animal form they can transform into if they want to disguise themselves as, you know, not a human. Singular because it's usually just one symbolic animal. Leviathan is a snake because she's a demon of envy, Asmodeus is a crow, Lucifer is a cat, and Aston is a tiny little Scotty dog. It's a reference to Mephistopheles and Faust. Also Mephisto and Blue Exorcist, now that I think about it. That might have been the initial inspiration. It just kind of worked out that Kazue Kato took that from the original Faust story. Okay, actually, never mind. I looked at the old Wattpad version again, and I made it canon that their drama class is doing a production of Faust and Aston is playing Mephistopheles. I was just a book nerd. I don't remember much else about it. I think that's all the important bits anyways. My life as a teenage demon. Would you want to see me take a crack at this one again? Let's move on to the next one. This one I remember having very high hopes for. So this one was the first comic I ever tried to write. Serialized comic, at least, with a full-on story and continuity, and you could probably tell what other webcomic was big when I started writing my totally original Operation Zodiac. For those asking, I never actually finished reading Homestuck in middle school. I got to Act 4 and lost interest, and then I never read it again. Or watched the pilot. So those of you asking, my Sono looking the way it does is more likely just a coincidence. I struggled for a bit to figure out what exactly to do for this cover. In the spirit of the original comic, I decided to handle it as if this were the first book in the series and had to draw the most important character first before getting to draw the others on their own covers in later volumes, like a manga. Or I guess just any kind of serialized comic, but you get the idea. Now then, to the story itself. To understand Operation Zodiac, I must first explain the lore. In the world of the comic, there are people known as Celestians. Not Celestials, Celestians, who are born with the power of any given constellation or just any kind of star formation in the sky, because I made a set of characters based on the Seven Sisters star cluster, even though that's not technically a constellation. Celestian powers work like the devil fruits in One Piece. Only one person of any given power can exist at one time, and once they die, someone else has a chance to be born with that constellation's power. I'd love to try working on this comic idea again for this lore alone, to be quite honest. I feel like there's a lot of fun character creation you could do with constellations, especially since some of them are more out there. Anyone could make Draco or Aquila, but I'd love to see people design magical girl-style heroes based on like a sextant or a crown, or my personal favorite challenge, a triangle. I'm getting off track. The premise of Operation Zodiac is that there's one Celestian who gets his powers from the Orion constellation, and he's like, all these normies are inferior to us Celestians, we should just get rid of them all. Humans killed my grandma. I remember I was trying to parallel Orion in the original myth when he was like, Artemis doesn't want to be my wife, I'll wipe out all the beasts from Mother Earth that she loves so dearly to get back at her. And of course we can't have him committing genocide, so a prophecy was foretold. A group of Celestians would be born with the powers of the Zodiac, something that has never happened in this world before, and they would destroy Orion. So Orion, of course, starts trying to take out babies that might be born with these powers. They all just barely escape him, though. One of them, plot twist, is his own kid! Sagittarius has daddy issues. Cut to the modern day, and we find out what Operation Zodiac is. It's a plan set up by a group of anti-Orion Celestians to gather up all the Zodiac kids, keep them safe, and train them to fight so they'll be ready to fulfill the prophecy and hopefully not get taken out by Orion before that can happen. You might think, oh, 12 Zodiac signs is a lot. Surely you split them up or something so you wouldn't have to balance so many central characters at once, right? No. We've got 13 kids to keep track of, plus a few with human friends, so let's list off the Zodiac kids, in order of calendar. And the good news here is that I redrew all of them for funsies a couple of Labor Days ago, so we have visuals to help you out here. First up, Kayla Hearth, our Aries. A sporty girl, no nonsense, can and will rock your stuff without a second thought. Her weapon is a sword and shield, and boy howdy is she going to use them. Then there's Ron Borovine, our Taurus. He's buff, he has a big hammer as a weapon, and one of the first fights the group gets into takes place in a vase shop, so they make him wait outside. Until things go haywire and he decides to hell with it and activates his power to run in and save his friends. Also, he was an Undertale fan, because I was 13 and wrote this, right around when the game first came out. And then the twins, Gemma and... what the hell, Ikik? That can't be how that was pronounced. Whatever, that's their names. Gemma and that guy, Lofferson. They're the Gemini characters, because apparently it's possible in this world's lore for two people to be born of the same constellations under certain circumstances. They're Canadian, and I only mention that because their family works in Cirque du Soleil, so they're a pair of troublemaking acrobats. Then we have Cameron Keeter, our Cancer boy. You ever be the most I really don't feel comfortable fighting people guy out of the bunch, but your powers are unfortunately the most fighty of the... Oh, my cinnamon rolls are done. You ever be the most I really don't feel comfortable fighting people kind of guy out of the bunch, but your powers are unfortunately the most fighty of the group? At least he's got armor. Also, I remember him carrying attack glitter because his parents wouldn't let him have pepper spray. Also, there was an ongoing joke about how all the other kids think he's gay, which, that aged well. Next, we have Catherine Felis, and gee, I wonder what... Leo. She's the Leo. She boxes, she's besties with Kayla, the Aries girl, and has a little brother who also has constellation powers because Leo Minor is a constellation that exists. Also, she was the love interest for the Scorpio guy. We'll get to him in a second. In the meantime, Bethany Watson. I remember two things about her. She liked to bake, and she liked anime. Fun lore thing, Celestians activate their powers magical girl style by yelling out, "Awaken! Power of the..." Insert constellation title here. My humor peaked when I made it so that the canon weeb of the comic could only activate her powers by yelling out, "Awaken! Power of the Virgin!" Next up, Libra. Her name is Nova. She's blind, and she's a little gremlin of a lady. Her weapon is a pair of slings because the silhouette made her look like the scales, and I thought that'd be neat. She's actively in a relationship with the Sagittarius guy. Scorpio, or Marshall Scandam, our token punk goth, or whatever kid. His face is so full of piercings, you could take a metal detector to it and it'd go haywire. He plays hockey in such a way that his teammates make bets each match on whether or not he'll lose a tooth, and which tooth it'll be. His bio mom was killed by Orion, and he was taken in by her best friend, and he probably thinks My Chemical Romance is the peak of all music. And he's right. He's the one that the comic mostly focuses on, since a scorpion is what originally killed Orion in the myth, so that made sense to me as a kid. Leiden Hunter, our Sagittarius. As mentioned earlier, Orion is his bio dad, but he doesn't know that. He was adopted by one of his mom's friends and never found out. He's rough and tumble, willing to protect his friends when in danger, and there was a very real scene I drew where he punched a velociraptor in the face. Also, he wasn't a centaur, because I thought that'd be fairly awkward for a magical girl transformation. Jeremy Hearth, the brother of our Aries girl, as well as the Capricorn kid. No fishtail though, but he has the wings you sometimes see in depictions of Capricorn. He had a spear, he likes Attack on Titan, and he was also the token character in the wheelchair. I'm sure he had some other personality to him, I just can't remember. And if you're wondering why he's standing in his magical girl form despite being wheelchair bound, this is because Baby Geeky thought it'd be a good idea to have the constellation magic fix his paralysis in Zodiac form. Something similar was done with Libra. I didn't want to open this can of worms, but I'd be remiss to gloss over it, especially considering these pages are still public online somewhere. And I know not everyone is disabled in the same way, and if someone uses a wheelchair, it doesn't necessarily mean they can't walk at all, and it may just be what's most comfortable for them. But I was explicit in this comic about Capricorn being totally paralyzed from the waist down. I was 13 when I wrote this, and I had never written disabled characters before, and I believe I was operating under the logic of Libra and Capricorn needing all the advantages they could get in order to fight Orion's little rogues gallery. It's blatant at the time that I hadn't discovered Daredevil yet. That or made the connection that I could have given Capricorn more of a support role like Professor X or Madam Web. Hell, I could have even just made his wheelchair be affected by the constellation magic and he could just like fly around in it or something like that American Sailor Moon cartoon. I don't know. I think I just genuinely didn't know better. Sage Van Aegis, the Aquarius, who is totally not a self-insert. Her dad's got the powers of the river constellation Eridana. Oh no, stop, get out of my head! So that's where her constellation power tendencies come from. She's just a general nerd and also dyed the ends of her hair blue because I wanted to do the same thing in middle school, but my parents wouldn't let me. And lastly, we have Max Undertow, the Pisces. I remember nothing about him except that he surfs, he's from Malibu, and his magical girl form is a merman, because of course it was. He also wielded a bident instead of a trident because Pisces is supposed to be a parafish, even though the bident is more associated with the underworld instead of the ocean like the trident is, but whatever. There were a handful of other fun characters I remember. Ursa St. Clair was one. She was the head of the whole Operation Zodiac anti-Orion team. Gee, I wonder what her constellation was. There was her partner in crime, Drake Beowulf, who was the Draco constellation, which is a dragon. You also had all of Orion's goons, like this guy with the Shepherd constellation, which gave him the power of mind control. Terrifying. Also, Ursa's little sister, who acted as a double agent. Possibly the funniest character in this comic conceptually was Caleb Abbott, who a friend of mine loves to pieces. He has been nicknamed Wolfie, and that's just his name forever now. He's the Aries girl's boyfriend, and also has the power of Lupus, the wolf constellation. So Kayla does, in fact, have a werewolf boyfriend in this comic that I wrote in middle school. This whole comic was a mess in so many ways, honestly, but that didn't stop me from drawing all the pages out on printer paper for my friends, and I got over 200 pages into the damn thing. Not all of them are online though, because at some point I inserted a character that was blatantly a dated reference to something, and even back then I thought it'd be too cringy to show the public. Basically, the kids figure out that Celestians can do old-timey Greek Hellenistic rituals to summon little guardian spirits, and I don't know if familiars like that are an actual thing in Greek mythology, but whatever, I made it a thing. And the Taurus kid summoned his in such a way that it manifested in the shape of Sans Undertale. He had a tiny pocket Sans to help him fight. I wish I was joking. That's not even to speak of the stuff that I actually put online. Suffice to say, please don't go looking for this one. Not even just from a I feel embarrassed about the writing and art quality standpoint. There's a lot of jokes and general dialogue in this one that 13-year-old me thought were good to go, and now I'm looking back at them all like, wow, you sure did put that on the internet. Either way, I drew this thing out with basically no plan except whatever basic ideas I had in my head. Didn't even write down an outline or anything, just kind of drew stuff and made it up as I went. Pro tip: don't do that. You should at least try to write some sort of basic plot outline for yourself when you start a comic. You can only keep so much of your roadmap in your head before things get jumbled and you forget stuff. Putting it on paper makes it way easier to plan out your pages and draw things out once the time comes. I did a way better job of that on this last one. I think out of all of these comics, this is the one I most want to revisit. I kept things simple enough to handle, and I feel like I'd enjoy seeing where I could take this story. It was called The Home on Clinton Road, and it was an urban fantasy supernatural romance. Oh boy. It followed Felicity, your totally average teenage girl who lives with her mom, dad, and little brother. They have to move for her dad's work, and the town they end up in is called Westenra, after Lucy Westenra from Dracula. Foreshadowing. It's in the middle of the woods in New Jersey, and the only house they could get was pretty far outside of it, and the only way into Westenra from Felicity's place is to travel along Clinton Road, a real road in New Jersey that's so haunted that it's widely regarded as the most haunted road in America, or at least back when I wrote this thing it was. Now it's apparently considered only the second most haunted road in America. Felicity makes friends with their neighbors in the one other house nearby, the Van Pierce family. More specifically, she makes friends with the two daughters of the family that are her age, Abigail and her younger sister Caitlin. Their parents are morticians, because of course they are. Their house is right beside the Westenra Cemetery that's outside of Westenra for some reason. I wrote this when I was 13. The real kicker is that there's a third house nearby. It's the titular home on Clinton Road, a boarding home for troubled teens. A group of teens that go to the same school as Felicity and the Van Pierce sisters, known colloquially as the Clinton Kids. A lot of stuff happens, school shenanigans. Eventually, Abigail's driving the three of them home from theater practice, swerves out of the way of a deer while driving back down Clinton Road, hits a pothole, and flat tires in the middle of the street. On this deep, dark road in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night. Conveniently enough, though, they broke down right by the Clinton Kids' house, and when they barge in to use the phone, they make a horrifying discovery. The Clinton Kids are all dead. That is to say, they're all undead. That's where the urban fantasy comes in. The undead are real and they have a secret society where they keep themselves hidden from the living, or breathers as they call them, so they aren't exploited or persecuted. That's a fun thing about this. Little me ended up going with the original horror of Haitian zombies, which isn't becoming a mindless zombie or anything like that, but more so this idea that even death couldn't save you from being exploited by your oppressors. I remember having a blast designing the Clinton kids, and I liked them enough to continue to use a few of them in other stuff. We've got Vladikov, the token vampire. He's actually Italian, but it's tradition in this world for vampires to change their name when they turn as a symbol of their new life, and this guy did the vampire equivalent of renaming himself John Smith. Tetsu, an Unro who was blatantly just Tek-Tek. She got cut in half and everything. She disguises herself like Chiron and Percy Jackson by using a wheelchair and putting a pillow under a blanket to make it look like legs. I also did that one thing movies and shows did when they couldn't figure out how to show the token Asian girl had personality and just gave her a colored streak in her hair. Oh boy. We also had Yeshen, who named herself after the Chinese fairy tale to distance herself from her old life. She's a Zhongsha, and the sweetest person out of the group. Big, gentle, giant energy. She walks with crutches because her legs are too stiff to walk normally. There's Johnny, a ghost of a 5-year-old boy who died of childhood cancer. He's just the token cute kid of the cast, but also just tragic as hell because, like, duh. And now the 3 I used in other stuff because I liked them too much. Aaron, a mummy who escaped from a moving truck after he reanimated on the way to a museum and fled into the woods, scared. He's a bit dumb since, you know, mummies get their brains taken out and all, but he's well-meaning. Doesn't understand that giving your friend a gold bracelet worth thousands of dollars is not a proper way to ask him to get you chips when he goes to Kroger. You may know him from that Montero animatic I made a few years back that I wish I could redo. Jesus. Frankincense, a lich who's doing everything he can to keep his body from rotting and therefore making it impossible for him to go out in public and go to school. He's Welsh, and also maybe one of the Knights of the Round Table? I don't know. I started scripting another original webcomic with him as the main character, but that's a story for another time. The other time being whenever I make that. And then there's Seth. God, he was fun. He's a ghoul, which means he does eat people, but it's not like Tokyo Ghoul, where it's all he can physically stomach. He can survive off of other raw meat and be fine. He was forcibly raised from the dead by a witch so she could use him to dispose of bodies, since, you know, ghoul. And then the witch got hanged during the Salem witch trials, so he's free to do whatever now. And whatever is going to high school a few states south of where he's from, I suppose. Finally get an education beyond whatever the Puritans were doing. Seth's your typical bad boy character you usually see in these YA-type stories. Gruff, blunt as a brick, not afraid to tell you like it is, constantly butts heads with the main girl, but also much like a burnt marshmallow in the sense that once you get to know him, he's all soft on the inside. He's also probably my favorite one design-wise because his entire body below the collarbone is skeletal. He's 75% bones. He was also Felicity's love interest because of course he was, but I distinctly remember having plans of them not being able to get together and they eventually go their separate ways at the end, all tragically. We're not pulling some Twilight nonsense where the 16-year-old girl gets together with this 100-year-old man in a 17-year-old's body or anything like that. Seems even as a middle schooler I knew that dynamic would get weird, to say the least. But a group of dead kids can't live in a house all by themselves. Human authorities might get suspicious of these perma-children just being unsupervised. Enter Eris, a poltergeist who died in her late 20s and serves as guardian of the Clinton kids. I had a whole lore thing where undead who died as minors and thus are stuck looking like minors forever get put into a program where they're housed with undead adults. That way they can still live normally in society, but it's not as weird as if they'd just been living alone. Kind of like foster care. I didn't think about what would happen if enough time passes for people to be like, hey, how come your teenagers are still teenagers? The big conflict of this whole story was that the undead community is kind of like the deep state. You get in trouble if you find out about it existing. And since Felicity and her friends know about it, that puts them in trouble. This undead council summons them to their headquarters in some kind of pocket dimension. I think it's located underground on the Isle of Man, and they've got portals connecting it all over the world via the most haunted places you can think of. When they get there, they're faced with the punishment usually dealt out to the living people who discover the community. The undeath penalty. They're forcibly made a part of the community through dying and then being resurrected. That's their most surefire way of making sure they don't try to take advantage of the undead. By also making them undead, I guess. Felicity's able to strike a deal, though. If they can keep their mouths shut about the undead being real until the new year passes, they'll be pardoned and allowed to live. Now, I'll admit I didn't get nearly as far as I did with Operation Zodiac on this one, but you know what I did hear that I didn't do with Operation Zodiac? Uploaded pages to Line Webtoon. That's right, this old thing is still floating around there, possibly. That Dreamwoods thing may have been my oldest digital comic ever, but this was the first digital comic I ever uploaded to an actual webcomic site. I should not have done that. But whatever, it's there now. And I forgot the password, so it's not like I could take it down if I wanted to. Just know that if you do seek it out and end up finding it, the art and writing quality is not up to snuff, and there's gonna be a lot wrong with it. Alright, that's everything. Overall, I feel like each of these has a little inkling of something where I wouldn't mind going back to them later. Maybe not as comics. If I got into writing books again, maybe I could make one of them a light novel or something. That'd be fun. I think out of all of these, Teenage Demon and Clinton Road are the ones I'd be most interested in going back to. Operation Zodiac feels a bit too ambitious of an idea right now. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of these. And maybe tell me which one of these you'd be most interested in me going back to revisit. Alright, bye.